Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Neil Smith, and this is part two of our episode of learning from Facebook. Nick Runyon recently went to Facebook's headquarters in Menlo Park, recently went to their office in Austin, Texas, and learned a ton directly from Facebook. The relationship with Facebook is incredible. Honestly, the heart that Facebook has to serve the church is incredible. And so if you haven't listened to last week's episode, I want to actually encourage you to pause this episode and go back and listen to that one because it will really tee up how we wrap up this conversation. So we're getting into 11 through 20 of Nick's learnings. So Nick, if you want to jump back into the list.
We're going to start this episode with tip number 11, be intentional. I think this is one of those ones I said in the last episode, some of these things are kind of obvious, but I think even an obvious one, if Facebook is telling me to be intentional, I'm always asking why. Like, why is that important to you? And I'm going to figure out how can I apply that.
Yeah. So what does that mean to be intentional on Facebook?
Yeah, I think, the context around that comment was really like, it's okay to like try different stuff, to have like, temporary initiatives or that kind of thing. But you really, you wouldn't like take your church and like switch directions every 2 weeks or every 2 months or whatever. You've got kind of a founding vision and you've got a point on the horizon that you're working toward.
Yes.
I think the same thing is true in social media management, your Facebook page, your Facebook groups. Like, let's intentionally be moving toward a point off in the distance. But on the way there, we can explore different kind of, avenues along this path. And so maybe I'll do like a prayer request Wednesday, or I'm going to do for a while or a season, I might do, some like funny posts on Tuesday or, we might experiment with a different kind of video creative or, things like that. But as long as there's an intentionality and a direction that we're heading in,
yep.
Like, let's keep that consistent.
Yes.
The why behind that is not only is that kind of good leadership practice, but you will be, communicating to your audience over time that we are going in this direction. And that gives people really the opportunity to learn, understand what you're about, and make a decision about whether or not they want to be involved.
Yeah, that's so good. And if I'm putting together some points you made from the last episode, is if you're shifting, and I'm maybe putting some words in your mouth, but a lot of people's Facebook strategy is to get people to come to their physical church. But if you're shifting from announcements and attendance to community, intentional is, and community happens in relationship, is maybe intentional is, I'm going to be intentional to build relationships on the platform, and that's your core intention.
Nona Jones, I think, is incredible. I mentioned her in the last episode, and many of these points I think I took away from her conversation because she's just she is focused on building intentional, meaningful communities among the faith-based users in the faith-based community on Facebook. Yeah. And so she is making direct correlations to these are the things that we are looking for, and this is how a church can apply it. Yeah. And we talked about this, like Facebook is not a digital billboard for you to advertise your church service. Yep. Facebook is a place for you to intentionally engage with your core audience, with your congregation on a regular basis. Yeah. And I think that's really a lot of the focus of the last episode, tips 1 through 10. This is for a church leader to intentionally build meaningful community with your congregation. Yep. We didn't mention it in that episode, but a win is not to promote your service times, Yeah. A win is to help people understand how can they connect so that they are then saying, oh, I am going to show up on Sunday morning. Yep. And I'll go figure out what time it is.
Yep.
Tip number 12, Facebook. This one's a little different. This is what Facebook wants. They want time on Facebook to be more valuable. This thing really resonated with me. I think, it's a continuation of a theme here, especially if you listen to the first episode. Like, we're talking a lot about value. We're talking a lot about meaning. at the risk of these words becoming empty, I'm highlighting in tip number 12 the fact that Facebook is watching how and what people are doing on Facebook. They've got teams that are focused on well-being. So there's whole teams at Facebook that want to understand, as people are using their product and when they're done using it, how do they feel? Mm-hmm. They've got teams that are focused on compassion. They've got teams that are focused on like doing good on Facebook. They want Facebook to be valuable to the user. They want people to feel good when they're done using it. So the application for us as church leaders is, how does the content, how does the messaging, how does the experience that we're crafting and providing make people feel, and is it valuable?
Yeah. That's interesting. And I'd love to hear, Nick, you share how you might measure value. I want to share just a thought that's stirring in my mind that I'm taking away. About 9 months ago, I was invited into Facebook's New York office. Literally, I had no idea. I got an email from somebody at Facebook saying, would you be willing to come to our office? I want to pick your brain about some things. I spent an hour with two ladies and their research team, just wanting to understand how our clients are using Facebook, with value they're finding from Facebook. They wanted to just listen. They soaked up, and they're like, can we record this so we can save this and share this with other team members? They valued my input into their platform. I think as church leaders, we can really just take away, boy, maybe we need to just spend some more time listening to our community, listening to our congregation, and just input, take on some more input. Rather, I think we make too many assumptions sometimes. So that totally away from these steps you're taking. But as I'm hearing just even your recent experiences with Facebook and how we maybe as leaders can learn from their culture, input is so key to their success.
I think that is so good. And, some of the points that were given in this was taken from a presentation that we watched from the ad team. So these guys were focused on, helping brands of a certain size, engage well through advertising. Yep. And it's less about like call to actions and conversion rates and all that kind of thing. I mean, that's important still, obviously, but the heartbeat of all of it was, are we doing something that's valuable? Gen Z, born after 1994, I think it is, average attention span, 2.8 seconds. Yeah. This is all my kids. 40% of all nerve fibers are linked to the retina. So through visual, like imagery and video processing, you're 60,000 times faster at processing visual data. Yeah. So when you think about like your content, your messaging, how you're displaying it, like these types of like scientific realities, attention spans, how your brain processes data, like Facebook is considering those, and they're doing a value measure on your content and your whole experience. And so understanding how that's happening, I think is important for us to not just play the game well, but there's a lot that we can learn here. To your point, it's like if you got some of the best and brightest minds looking at this stuff, I think our takeaway is, I need to really be investing in creating more video content that's quickly, within 3 seconds, delivering my main idea. That type of thing. Sidebar, because I love talking about my kids. My little 2-year-old, my daughter was playing, she's 4, he's 2, opening and closing the door to the patio. She's like, inside, outside, inside, outside. I'm like, somebody's going to get their hands chopped off, But I was like, that reminds me of Sesame Street, like Grover, when he did the near and far. You remember that one?
I don't remember that.
So look it up on YouTube, which is what I did. Yeah. And so like you've got a shot of a sound stage. This is like classic old school Sesame Street. And Grover like is close to the camera. And then he runs way back and he's like, far, near, Yeah. And it's like, I remember that from a kid. I'm playing it for our kids, and it's like 4 or 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
My daughter's sitting there, she's laughing, and then she stops. She's like staring at the screen. And she looks at my wife and she says, why is he still doing this? She's like, why is this still going on? I thought he'd be done by now. How come it's not over? And I'm like, there's no cutaways. this generation, like that was just this stark contrast between, wait a second, video production, even video, like the way that we made films 20, 30 years ago, and how stuff's being produced today. It's rapid fire, it's quick cuts, it's good editing, it's high quality content.
Yeah.
My 4-year-old is recognizing that.
Yep.
We have to be delivering value through our media as well.
Absolutely.
So this is all a lead into tip number 13. Use quality imagery.
Yeah.
You have to have quality imagery. This is like, 4K, or man, if you're posting from your mobile phone, like clean your screen off, make sure, look up some tutorials on lighting and that kind of thing. Yeah. Just high quality, high production value is, I think, more and more critical.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see this.
I totally. And I think, I push back on church leaders a lot for handing off social media to teenagers too quickly, because I think some of our best social media volunteers are 50 plus. But I think this is one of those areas where what a 14-year-old girl can do, and I say girl or guy too, but girls seem to be much more talented than guys in this, what they can do with a photo on their smartphone, from capturing to editing. They are pros when it comes, so they don't have to have a DSLR camera or, a high-end camera. Now that does help. But this is one of those areas that teenagers just understand how to capture, because they have from the beginning had phones where my first phone was a disposable, little Kodak disposable camera, and I couldn't see it until it was printed out weeks later. I didn't know how to frame things, and it was too expensive, so we didn't take very many pictures. Pictures did not become a part of my life realistically till I was like 30. And being able to take them. And so, but I would say this younger generation it's more natural for them. So I think it's a great opportunity to really integrate some of the younger folks in your congregation that are more natural and gifted in that area.
For sure. Tip number 14, know your voice. And I think this becomes even more important when you've got a team engaged in your social media strategy, content, supporting your group. There's a lot of great tools out there that I've seen where it's like you can just almost fill in like a worksheet and help kind of define your corporate voice. Like, are we going to be funny? Are we going to be serious? Are we teaching? Are we experiencing? There's all these decisions to be made, but like getting a consistent voice, I think, is also, it's how you communicate, and it's communicating your culture. It's communicating who you are, the entire experience. That really needs to be consistent to help build engagement. People are more likely to engage with something where they know what the reaction is going to be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So like when you tweet at Wendy's right now, that you're going to get flamed. And that's why people are doing it, is because I want Wendy's to insult me. Yeah. If you're like IBM and some social media manager at IBM is like, hey, I'm going to start responding in a sarcastic, mean way like Wendy's is doing because it's working for them. Like, that's not going to work. Yes.
Yes.
You're just going to tick people off and push them away and destroy your brand. Like creating a consistent experience for your congregation or for people that are engaging with you on Facebook is critically important, so they know what to expect and they're more likely to engage.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know the specific resource to point people to, but Holly Tate at Vanderbloemen Search Group has put out some content around this with personas and to getting your voice that is so valuable for church leaders. So go Google Holly Tate, Vanderbloemen voice persona, something. You're going to find some great content out there. She's the best in that space that I'm aware of.
She's very good. Tip number 15, I think is fascinating. And I love future predictions. We try our hands at future predictions from time to time. 70% of all content will be video by the year 2020. Now, listen, I don't like to think of myself as old, Nils, but I think I'm getting old. I pulled my back the other day, like standing up from this desk just to walk to get a coffee. Yeah. But 2020 seems like a long time away to me. I'm still like, I'm old enough to be like, oh, 2020, that's the future.
Yes.
That's like 2 years.
Yes.
That's a year and a half. That's 18 months.
Yes, it is.
70% of your content. I am already seeing when we post just text or when we post images, it's getting way less engagement. You've got to be in video.
Yes. And that's it. There's no way around it. I honestly might have thought that it was already 70%. It's close already. And so I think that might be a very safe prediction from a prediction standpoint of where this is going with video. I think a big question is, how does audio integrate into Facebook in the future, or some other aspects of media creation? But yeah, there's no doubt every church, and that's the beauty of smartphones today, though, is every church has the opportunity to be in video. I think, though, to your point earlier, is video alone is no longer good enough. There's a quality standard now with video, and I think we've got to push that. I think some great content out there. I love Sean Cannell, a lot of stuff he puts out there. Brady Shearer, even what he's done with Story Tape, making good high quality just video backgrounds and stuff available. There's some good stuff out there, but we've got to not only do we need to be in video, we need to be pushing the quality of our video as well. Being just having video is no longer just good enough.
Yeah, and I think it depends on like the message and what you're doing. So like if it's say you've got like I don't know. Say we're running a series like after the new year and we're like, it's a weight loss kind of thing, and the pastor's going to do a Facebook Live from the gym 3 days a week.
Yep.
Holding that on my, on my phone, recording, like as I'm walking in or whatever, thoughts for the day, or like a daily devotional, you can get away with maybe lower quality. Yep. I mean, still pay attention to things like framing and lighting.
Yep.
But if I'm streaming my sermon every week through Facebook Live, that cannot be an iPhone on a tripod with bad audio and an hour-long deal where I'm supposed to consume like everything from the worship music to the entire service experience through a cell phone video. Like that won't work.
And maybe it's a place to start, but get better. And I think too, one of the things we find with all of our client work is when we do those kind of like cheap selfie videos, they get much more engagement. But if that's all they did, they wouldn't get any engagement. It stands out because it's different from the other. I think there is a place for that, and maybe that's the place that you start. But don't just settle for, okay, I'm doing video, and what I often hear is, you told me to do video and it's not working. And it's like, you got to get better. You got to get better. You got to do more. Yeah.
And so why is it not working too? I mean, that's another part of it. So, and I think some of these other tips, like, is it valuable? Is what you're talking about adding value? There's a lot of variables there.
Yep.
Okay. All of the makers, all of the creatives are going to hate this next one. Tip number 16, shoot vertical video.
Ooh.
Oh, this was like, I heard groans in the room when they were talking about this, because you got people in there with the DSLRs. You've got like all the, I got the gear. I'm a video editor. I'm a filmmaker. I'm letterbox. And no, it's 9:16. Like if you're delivering video on Facebook, it needs to be vertical video. IGTV is out.
Yep.
Right now, I've got 2 people editing all of our content library into 9:16 to launch it on IGTV and to start seeding our Facebook posts through vertical video.
Interesting.
What are your reactions to that, Nils? This is a huge workflow change.
It is a huge workflow change, and we're at Dunman Company. We do a lot of social content for clients. And it's messing up our workflows and our processes, and we're having to go back to old content that we're trying to repurpose and totally re-edit. And honestly, we didn't save the files effectively because we're having to go back even further because we can't. Just some of the aspects of how you edit now, it's creating some issues. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's more challenging for us. At the end of the day, we want to create valuable content in the optimal way for the end consumer that we want to engage. And so we've got to do it. I think the other thing that not being a creator, I get to kind of be the dictator of look, we got to do it. But I think another thing to creatives is, your DSLR camera, it turns as well. And so it's not like you cannot create it with a high quality camera, and you have to just go to crummy video because your camera actually turns as well.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to think about just adapting a little bit and adjusting. It's going to be okay.
We call it portrait mode.
Yes.
So here, let me give you some ammunition, because there's probably other dictatorial leaders in our listening audience like yourself, Nils. It takes 2 swipes to get a vertical video off of a Facebook news feed on my mobile. So and if you think about that, it takes up the majority of the screen. So if I do landscape 16:9 or 4:3 video in my in my posts, I've got competition on my screen. I can see like even my username. I can see the post below me. But if I do vertical video, it takes up the whole screen. And I'm losing track. Was 2.3 seconds? Yeah, that was in this episode. 2.3 second attention span means that I want to eliminate as much screen competition as possible. So vertical video is the way to do it. Tip number 17, don't just post any video. Think about what's the story that I'm trying to tell. And I think that, along with, humans are really good at pattern recognition. So right now, I just mentioned, we're editing all of our existing video into 9:16. That's only going to work for like the first week. You know what I mean? Because people are going to say, oh, this is a bigger video chopped down, and I've got like weird framing and all that stuff. If you're going to tell a story, and you need to be telling a story, you need to do it you need to combine these 2 tips together. So already we're seeing, if I got 16:9 video, I have to choose a little sliver to show in my re-editing. That disrupts the story. So in a vertical video format, what story am I trying to tell, and how am I going to do it by putting all these things together?
Interesting. It's a shift. It's a big shift, and we've got to adjust.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. Tip number 18, and I had to include this one because I hate vanity metrics. But if y'all haven't caught on to this, page likes don't drive users' decisions. So there you go. Maybe they used to. Maybe page likes used to give some level of authority. I think, it's still maybe somewhat authoritative if I've got 1 million people that liked my page. But there doesn't seem to be any like material influence on the decision making relative to your page likes.
So a lot of people, this is a big pain point, and this is happening on YouTube as well, of how they've shifted their platform. Of a lot of people spend a lot of time growing their following, and now their following isn't paying attention. Are they just out of luck?
No, that's what happens. I mean, we talked about this. So, my family, my mom's a regular listener, so I'll see if I get any comments on this one. But my family owns like a 4-generation lumberyard in small town America. And I grew up in a small town. Small towns have been, small town Main Street has been destroyed in a lot of ways. I believe it's coming back because shopkeepers, small businesses are getting more creative, and they're saying, okay, we have to adjust. But there's been like 20 years lost in that environment. I'm confident that it can come back. But the big box stores innovated. They brought in a different offering. People shifted to it, and businesses couldn't adapt and keep up. If you are a social media marketer, if you're in the digital space, you're making your living off of that. Holly says this all the time. You're only renting space. Like, you don't own Facebook, and they don't owe you anything. Like, you are using their platform. If you built a following and it was working and now it's not working, Facebook doesn't have to change.
Yeah.
You have to change.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with a woman, Avery, at Facebook in Austin, who I really enjoy just kind of picking her brain on some of this stuff. And she made a comment like, we understand that when we make these changes, people are going to go out of business, and they don't like that. They're not trying to do that.
Yeah.
But what trumps that in the decision-making process is, can we fulfill our mission, which is to create meaningful engagement?
Yeah.
So if you're doing something that was working 5 years ago and it's not working now, shame on you. You should have shifted.
Yeah.
So that's a tough reality sometimes.
Yeah. That is a tough reality. That is the ongoing reality though for churches, and it's happening faster than ever, and we have to continue to adapt and adjust.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
And I'll be the first one to say it feels like a hamster wheel sometimes, but it's also a mission field. I think, Hudson Taylor dressed in Chinese clothes. He slept on a concrete floor and he navigated the rivers of China to go share the gospel with people. Mm-hmm. I can figure out how to shoot 9:16 video to get the message out there.
Yep.
I'm a big Hudson Taylor fan. Tip number 19. Do not have 2 call to actions on one post. And I think a lot of people make this mistake because there's so much stuff that we want them to do. Even you and I, Nils, social media experts that we are, make this mistake. In the episode we just recorded, we said, like us on Facebook, leave a review, comment. Like, okay, I had never heard this story before. Do you know why a lion tamer at the circus can hold back the lion with a stool? Have you ever seen him? You got like a whip and a stool.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know how.
Okay, so that imagery though, you understand that. Like, I've got the stool and I've got,
Yep.
I'd never heard this, but we were talking about it, and some people were discussing it, and they said, well, when you've got like 4 points of a stool or 3 points of a stool, you've got 3 things coming at the lion. So if it was just like the lion tamer, that's a single target. But because there's multiple points, like kind of moving in the field of vision, the lion gets confused and like is kind of put off, and they don't know what to do, and so they don't do anything. The exact same thing is true when you have multiple calls to action. People just don't do any of them.
Totally. Such as marketing best practice definitively applies to Facebook as well. So good. And churches are there. I mean, you think about announcement time in church we have our 17 announcements, and and we have 27 in the bulletin, and nobody responds to any of them. And so, just good marketing best practice right there.
I've got to piggyback on that because I got a laugh out of it when I said this the other day, and I'm hoping you'll laugh as well. But like, I was reading Mark Twain to my kids, and it's like Tom Sawyer is sitting in church, and he makes this comment about, and then the pastor turned himself into a human bulletin board as if we couldn't all read the bulletin board for ourselves. And like, Tom Sawyer hates going to church. I might have even shared this with you before. Yeah. But like, it's this idea is like, how come we're still doing things that were ridiculous more than 100 years ago?
Yeah.
And like, I don't need to be a bulletin board. I don't need to give you everything all at once. Like, what's the most important thing?
Yep.
2.8 seconds attention span, Nils. 2.8 seconds.
2.8.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Tip number 20.
Number 20.
This is it, the big finale. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
If we were like a real production, we would have like a sound booth, a guy, the horn stuff. If you're going to use Messenger, you need to have somebody responding. So maybe anticlimactic, but I think this is so important, and that they highlighted it. Let me read between the lines on this one here. Meaningful engagement. Is there anything more meaningful than a private message? Mm-hmm. When you move from public viewing to public commenting to private messaging, now I'm engaged.
Yes. You've
got to respond. It's got to be a two-way conversation, because that should not be a black hole.
Yes.
And I think bots and stuff, I think are appropriate, but there's a recognition that that's a bot versus a person.
Yes.
And I didn't hear for sure, but I don't think Facebook's going to be measuring bot engagement as meaningful or as more meaningful than a human.
Yep.
And so I think it's a great add-on. We've got Messenger on the Social Media Church website. Yep. We've got to respond, have that as a two-way conversation.
Yep.
Messenger is a great tool, but use it well.
Yeah. I mean, that's gold. That's a small thing. And we have pushed Messenger bots here. But I think across the board, we want to automate, and automation it can be a very good thing. But there is nothing, when we talk about meaningful relationships, there's nothing more meaningful than a person talking to another person. And we have to prioritize that in every way possible. I think too, of just somebody managing your message box is historically, just think about your receptionist at your church. This is your Facebook receptionist.
Yeah.
Is people responding to comments, and probably first responding to private messages and then responding to comments, because likely what will happen in your comments is the community itself will be responding to a lot of those comments. Only the person that's the admin on the page, or only the people that are admins on the page, have access to that box. And so it really has to be prioritized. That's a huge tip. Well, anything, Nick, as we wrap up, that you would say holistically, bringing this together, your experience, what church leaders need to know about Facebook? Anything as you pull all this together from your perspective.
So I think I was, super excited to be invited to speak to this group that was meeting out there at Menlo Park. And yes, I am gushing about the ability to say to you and other friends, oh, I got to speak at Facebook. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's technically true. One of the things that we included in our presentation was this simple idea that capped it all off. And I think it's a good recap of everything that we shared here. So this is a bonus tip: share your stuff. There is a sharing economy that exists, and I think has existed in the for-profit space for a long time. You've got open source software. You've got people that are I know you're a big Gary V fan. There's just kind of knowledge and wisdom and experience that's pouring out. And I think as believers and as church leaders, as churches, we're pouring out knowledge and wisdom and tips and tricks. And tips and tricks minimizes it. It's biblical counseling and all these things from a spiritual standpoint. But in the social media, in the community engagement arena, I think we tend to be a little bit more exclusive and kind of keep things close to the vest. Yep. We should share our stuff. If something is really working, let's take, Facebook and their cue, inviting you in and saying, hey, Nils, what's working for you? What do you like? What do you don't like? Here's what we're learning. Here's how can we help you? We should be doing that as well across the body of Christ. Share your stuff. Because all these things change rapidly. It is a little bit like a hamster wheel, trying to keep up with some of this stuff.
Yep. But
what makes that better is kind of operating within community where I've got the support of friends like you, and we can, offline talk about, what's working well. What did I do? What have I seen? What are you seeing? And let's be inclusive and very giving in that respect.
I love it. And with that, I'm gonna promote and I don't want to be confusing with too many calls to action, because there's so many things I want to share all the time.
I got you on that one, didn't I?
You got me. And I'm going to tee you up in a minute to give our closing call to action, whatever that is that you want it to be, because it is such a good, that call out though was such a good call out of, that is exactly what we do in our churches all the time. But I want to encourage people to go, if you're not a part of the Church Communications Facebook group, that is such a great community for sharing. And just like what you're talking about, Nick, of those church leaders that are in there, they're engaging with each other, they're sharing their learnings, they're sharing their frustrations. It's one of the coolest communities I've ever been a part of on Facebook. And so I just wanted to highlight that for anybody that's not a part of the Church Communications Facebook group. It's a great community for that happening. So Nick, what's our call to action? as we wrap up this podcast?
Oh, Nils, we would love it if listeners would share this with a friend. Share your stuff. Yeah, we hope that Social Media Church Podcast is valuable to you, is beneficial to you in your role. And we know that you're likely to know other people that are in the same space. So share this as a great resource with your friends.
Yeah, so share it and rate and review and go to our website and join our email list, and we'll have free resources somewhere. And make sure you go visit nilsmith.com. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So go share this with a friend. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Social Media Church Podcast.